John Wick Chapter 2 was released earlier this year. It was directed by Chad something I'm not going to try pronouncing because I know I'll butcher it, but it was directed by that guy, and it stars Keanu Reeves. The film follows John Wick, who is now officially trying to retire, but unfortunately, since this is an action movie about an assassin, he naturally sucks at retiring. And I mainly point this out because as he's trying to retire and he doesn't want to be an assassin anymore and he just wants to be the everyday man, but someone who works at the same assassin company that he works at, and this guy essentially blackmails John Wick using a method I won't spoil for you because I didn't see it coming, but John Wick is blackmailed into joining back into the field for the purpose of killing a specific person. Now, this is actually a really late review, and the main reason why I say that is because in a lot of other countries, this movie came out in cinemas back in February. However, I did get to see this movie in cinemas, but here in Australia, it didn't come out in cinemas until around 14th of May or something. Not only that, but in the current theatre that I go to usually when I go to see movies, I went to the very last screening, so if I went any later, I would have missed it. I would have lost my chance to see this movie on the big screen. So I did go to see it in cinemas, but I only just saw it like a couple of weeks ago, and that's why this review was so late. Now, some of you guys may know, as much as I absolutely love action movies, you may have also noticed that I have never, ever mentioned John Wick on this channel, and there's a very good reason for why. I only just saw it. I heard nothing but great things about the John Wick movies, however, going into 2, I still had not seen the original John Wick, and so I ended up watching the original John Wick the night before going to see the second John Wick. And so the reason why I haven't spoken about the first one up until recently is just simply because I haven't seen it up until recently. I may or may not do a review for the original John Wick, but to quickly summarize my thoughts on the original, I thought it was an excellent film. I went in with relatively high expectations because I've been hearing really great things about it. And when I finished the first one, I was still surprised by how great it was, despite the fact everyone was saying that it was a great movie. And I thought it was a fantastic movie, and I'll go into a lot more detail as to why if I choose to review the original John Wick, which I may or may not. So since I loved the first one so much, I was naturally really excited to see the second one. I also did something with John Wick Chapter 2 that I didn't really get to do much with other movies that I go to see in cinemas lately, and that is the fact I went to see John Wick Chapter 2 in cinemas knowing practically nothing about it. Going into John Wick Chapter 2, the only knowledge I had was the events of the first movie and the fact he was just coming out of retirement back into the field, and that's literally all I knew about the movie going in. And I've got to say, it was a ton of fun going into this movie and just watching the story unfold with that limited information. Something I'm really hoping to do with more movies in the future. And I can safely say that John Wick Chapter 2 is a very worthy sequel to the original. This movie was a ton of fun to watch on the big screen. The thing I really appreciate about these John Wick movies in particular is how unique the plots are. A lot of action films are starting to have really generic plots like beat the bad guy or somebody's taken my daughter and other plots of the sort. However, these movies have very different concepts and different plots that I've never seen before in other action films. And that's something I've actually noticed a lot about Keanu Reeves. He seems to do a really great job of picking action films with very different original concepts. The Matrix was very different for its time. Now it's been copied and parodied to death. One example of another excellent Keanu Reeves movie with a very different concept was the movie Speed, one of my all-time favorite movies. I was hooked into the movie just simply by the premise. There's a bomb on a bus. If it goes under 50 miles an hour, it explodes. Amazing concept. And to this day, it is still one of my all-time favorite movies. And so I'm really starting to miss those days where we get action movies with very original concepts instead of just typically beat the bad guy or somebody took my daughter or something like that. So seeing another good Keanu Reeves action movie that has a different and original concept was extremely refreshing, especially to see it in cinemas too. And since this movie had a different story to a lot of other action films, that instantly made it a lot more compelling. Throughout the large majority of the film's running time, I genuinely had absolutely no idea as to where this film was going. And I really liked John Wick as a character. A lot of people say John Wick is one of Keanu Reeves' best performances, and I have to agree. He is amazing in these movies. To the point where this is one of the very few Keanu Reeves movies where I don't see Keanu Reeves. I also loved what they did with the villain in this movie. Not only was he well performed, but I also found him very compelling and very manipulative in many ways. I love what they do with his motivation. I love how the motivation allows you to see where he's coming from and why he wants the thing he wants. However, it also tells you a lot about him as a person, because it just makes him look extremely selfish. And I do believe that was intentional. Very different, and in my opinion, a lot more interesting than the whole, oh crap, he's gonna kill us, we better kill him first, kind of thing that we got from the first movie. One other aspect of his character I really love is the fact that he is the villain of the story, but he works for the exact same company that John Wick works for. So, the main character and the villain work for the same company, which I think is extremely cool and a really very unique concept, considering usually the hero either goes rogue from the entire company, or the hero is trying to take down another person from a different company. So seeing a hero and a villain working for the same company is very, very unique, and I really love that kind of concept for this film. And I was really intrigued by seeing him trying to blackmail John Wick out of retirement for his own selfish reasons. And the action in this movie is incredible, to the point where this is the highlight of the film. The way the action is shot, staged, and choreographed is all very, very similar to how it was done in the first movie. And I have no problem with that because I loved how the action was handled in the first movie. I love seeing John Wick traverse through buildings, shooting his way through hordes of a massive number of enemies. Seriously, this guy is really, really good with guns. If stormtroopers had the same aiming skills as John Wick does, the original Star Wars movie would be over in like 10 seconds flat. This movie also has some of the best hand-to-hand combat scenes I've ever seen in a movie, including one that takes place inside a train, and I was gripping my seat handles. It was magnificent. Also, the scene with the pencil. Love it. I also love the locations and set pieces in this movie. Honestly, the location that was chosen for the climax of this movie was a brilliant idea. It was so brilliant, and it also allowed for extremely creative cinematography and camera work. I won't spoil where it takes place, but let me just say I absolutely loved the climax of this movie, mainly due to the camera work, the way it was shot, and just simply the concept of where they chose to shoot it. It was just a brilliant idea. And the cinematography is nowhere near as stylistic as it was in the first movie, but it still has a very slick look that I really do think adds to the film. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie, and in terms of flaws, while not to spoil anything, I do think that the ending was a bit sloppy. And I mainly say that due to how the ending was paced. I mean, we have our big, epic, exciting climax, which I absolutely loved. And then another scene happens right after it, and then another scene happens, and these last few scenes had me go, oh, okay, it looks like they're wrapping things up. It looks like that the movie's coming to a close. I think this movie's ending now. And so I was mentally preparing myself, and I was just waiting for the credits to start. But then it keeps going. And then it keeps going. And then something happens. And then after this, something happens, the movie goes on for another 1 or 2 scenes, and I started to think to myself, due to this thing that happened, I go, ah, okay, I guess the movie's not over yet. I guess we've got another maybe 20 to 40 minutes to go yet. And then the movie just ends. Very, very abruptly ends. And so that had me leaving the theater slightly confused. And I'm not exactly sure what the point of that ending scene was, unless of course they were setting up for a John Wick Chapter 3. And if they are, I'm totally on board for it. I would love to see a John Wick Chapter 3. Assuming it's good, which it probably will be. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I still really, really enjoyed this movie, and I do not regret seeing it in theaters. I'm going to give John Wick Chapter 2 an A. Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for my next review, but until then, yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers.